My name is Kurt Schmidlein. I'm a senior at Bard. I'm an economics major, and I just finished my final season of soccer in October.
So you've been playing soccer for how long?
I've been playing since I was 6 years old. I played 3 varsity seasons here, and now I'm looking to see how one can play competitively, but not too seriously or intensely after college.
So that's actually your goal after graduation?
Well, recreationally, not anything too competitive or time-consuming.
What kind of led you into soccer? Parents or some?
I also played baseball and skated as a kid, and it was just the one that stuck. I played baseball through high school, and just when I came here, soccer was the natural sport to continue.
And what position do you play?
I originally played midfield in high school and ended up playing center defense here at Bard.
Soccer's very physical. What type of injuries have you endured over the course of the...
Well, the last game of my freshman season, I tore my medial meniscus in my right knee. So that was late October. I had surgery in early January of the following year to repair the tear. Generally, or typically, one gets the torn bit snipped in the meniscus just so it doesn't catch anymore. But the tear was so large in my knee, in my meniscus, that the doctor thought it was prudent to repair it because losing that amount of meniscus could be really damaging long term. So the recovery time was much longer. I was on crutches for 2 months, and then I did a recovery process with the athletic trainer here, it was the year before Matt got here. So that was the spring of 2010.
What did it feel like, the pain?
Initially, it was something that I really didn't understand. There was a point past which I couldn't bend my knee. So there was a locking mechanism that was happening, and the locking itself wasn't painful. It was more the movement that was painful on the inside of the knee. And initially, the athletic trainer wasn't sure what it was, but I got an MRI done nearby about a week after that game and saw what it was, scheduled a surgery, and the recovery process was actually much more painful than the injury itself.
What was that like, waking up every day? And
so the initial surgery itself, it was the first time I had ever been under an anesthetic, so that was a strange experience to begin with, but it was a general inability to move and an inability to escape the pain as well, because I couldn't move, because I couldn't do much. My whole leg was swollen to an extent I didn't think was possible. I had scars, still have scars, and even though it was an orthoscopic surgery, there's still 3 points of entry, and there was still very significant swelling because they had to get in under the kneecap from both sides of the knee, and it took the swelling itself took probably about 3 weeks to really subside completely, and that was probably the worst of that time because I was on oxycodone at the time, and in my experience that really dulled sort of my character almost. I had been planning on doing a lot of reading and sort of more mental activities during this recovery process, but I found that I was really dulled and sort of, what's the word? I was really just mellowed out to an extent, to a point I didn't think was possible beforehand, and I was on those drugs for probably a month or so, and had all sorts of issues with constipation, with generally not feeling well, all in reaction to this, what would appear to be a small surgery.
And you're a student. How did you get through courses and friends and?
Well, luckily we had a long winter break. I had about 4 weeks at home before coming back here, but I was still on crutches when I got back here for a month in the winter, and I was starting classes again. So it certainly wasn't easy. The lack of mobility was the hardest part because I'd always been so mobile, and not being able to move myself and having to rely on friends to drive me to class was as much of a toll as well, mentally and emotionally. The recovery process too, I said I was on crutches for 2 months, but realistically I wasn't walking properly and playing soccer until April or so. So it's a much longer process than it may appear to be on camera, may appear to be on paper, because the doctor says, oh, you'll be off crutches in 6 to 8 weeks. The swelling will go down in 4. You'll be fine. But it's a much longer process to do it right.
Did you feel frustrated, angry?
Definitely. Like I said, being active was such a central tenet of what I was, that not being able to do anything for 3-4 months, it really messed with my schedule. I couldn't exercise, so I couldn't sleep. The narcotics were kind of screwing with the sleep as well. So the whole process really threw off my whole cycle, beyond just not being able to walk.
Did they talk when they gave you narcotics about addiction, about your course with them?
I don't remember specifically. I do remember my mom being more concerned about me being on narcotics than the doctor was, which definitely has much to do with the fact that my family has always been, had a sort of homeopathic mindset and an organic mindset. So introducing oxycodone into my daily regimen was a pretty significant change from what we were used to and what our sort of family values are.
How did you kind of stop taking them? What was the progression of healing?
I stopped taking them, I think, just when I ran out. As I said, they had been messing with my daily rhythm to the extent that I didn't want to be on them anymore, and I luckily didn't have any issue with addiction or needing more. The pain had subsided, and the cons definitely outweighed the pros by the time the subscription ran out.
What was part of your healing process after that?
Mobility, mostly. Coming into the athletic training office pretty much every day to do strengthening. I remember especially my right calf really, maybe atrophied is a dramatic word, but it really lost a lot of mass, lost a lot of strength, and my hamstring was unbelievably tight. My quad was in a lot of sort of like gnarled pain. It was really, really tight and constricted. So a lot of the process was dealing with the other muscles, dealing with the mobility and strength and flexibility of the other muscles and ligaments.
Does BARD promote swimming, acupuncture massage?
I don't know if BARD does. I think because of, at the time, the healthcare plan that BARD had for its students wasn't great. The insurance company that we had at the time, I believe it was Pomco, or that was the parent company, would not supply or pay for the knee brace I needed after the surgery. Never mind pay for the surgery itself, which I sustained on, the injury I sustained on school grounds during a college varsity athletic, event. So my experience with the insurance wasn't good to begin with, and because of how minimal the coverage was, there wasn't much room to even think about alternative coverage, alternative care under the college's plan. But like I said, my family has always operated with a homeopathic mindset, and I did several alternative practices as part of my recovery process. And I should mention that one of the things that slowed down my recovery process pretty significantly was the fact that I had Lyme disease at the time, but didn't know it yet, which really slowed down the healing of the knee, left the inflammation for longer than the doctor had said the inflammation would last. So during the spring, I tried massage therapy for some of the pain I was experiencing in my back and right leg, still a hamstring, calf, quad. And I also tried Reiki for the first time, which I was very skeptical of at first. I would say to my mom, okay, like I'm fine with Tom's toothpaste. Sure. Tom's deodorant, not so much. But Reiki, I'm not into the whole magic thing. But it turned out that Reiki was probably the single biggest, what's the word? Reiki definitely helped speed along my recovery more than I had anticipated, and helped address sort of the mental and the emotional angst that I think an injury can cause in someone. The Reiki is much more about the energy flows, and not necessarily scientifically readable or quantifiable stuff, but the Reiki focus on the energy flows of the body, about making sure that my head was in a good place and my body was working in a sort of like a peaceful way. I remember one time going in and my stomach was terribly upset. I don't remember why, maybe still because of the oxycodone, and immediately this Reiki practitioner calmed my stomach down, calmed my angst down, and then got to work on whatever it was that she did. And that for me was a sort of turning point, and I started focusing more on homeopathic and sort of holistic methods, which turned out to be perfect timing, because later that year in August I was diagnosed with Lyme disease, actually a couple of days after I came back here for preseason. I had slowed down significantly. My joints had been in a lot of pain, a lot of swelling, and it was pain that I had never really experienced before, and I thought that it was still left over from rusty joints from a surgery and from not being out on the field. But then I got some blood work back from my doctor, and he told me that I definitely had Lyme disease, and fairly severe case of it. And he was a homeopathic doctor, so my regimens fit in with what he wanted.
You must have been like, oh man, I just got over this and now I have to deal.
Exactly. I did not play soccer here my sophomore year. I wasn't capable of it because of the joint pain, and because of how constricted and kind of gnarled my muscles were. I lost 40 pounds during the fall of that year. I went from about 190 to 150, which was a ridiculous drop for me. I never really varied in my weight, always been in shape, and very quickly lost 40 pounds. Part of that definitely was the fact that I was on a very heavy-duty course of antibiotics. I was on 5 strands during the fall, so amoxicillin, clarithromycin, mycobutin, Malarone. I forget the last one. I always do. That's it. Doxy. And that sort of pain was something that I had never experienced before, and it wasn't really. I never, even really thought about any sort of narcotics, but my doctor never prescribed them, so I never went down that road. But I would imagine that if someone was going to use narcotics, this is what you'd use them for. This level of pain and this amount of discomfort, in terms of sleeping, moving, anything you do.
And how long did it take you to recover? It seemed you were already armed with different types of therapies and.
Mm-hmm. I probably recovered fully in March or April the following year. So I was on antibiotics for 8 months, 5 strands, which for those who have been on antibiotics, they know that antibiotics are like chemotherapy in a way, in that they kill off bad stuff, but they kill off a lot of good stuff at the same time, especially in terms of digestion, sort of gut flora. So I'm still on probiotics because of the imbalances that those antibiotics caused. But something that the Lyme disease really taught me was that you do need a much more holistic approach to your body and how you view health. For example, I never even thought about pH in terms of the human body. I remember learning about pH in school when I was 7th or 8th grade, but the pH of my body during that time was about 4.5-ish, which is way too acidic. I had a yeast infection throughout my body for months, running a pretty constant fever because of that imbalance. So that's something that the athletic trainer Matt and I have discussed a lot in this past year, about how things like pH really affect your physical and mental health. How good health is about far more than your weight and how defined your six-pack is. pH is incredibly important.
When did you start playing soccer again? Was that your decision? When did you feel well enough?
I played again my junior year, so the following fall, and definitely at a diminished speed and strength that really took me down a notch. Between the surgery and then the Lyme disease, it was a while. It was 2 years before the last game I played and then coming back. So it's a long time to not play soccer. But came back in the fall of 2011, and then that was our first year in the Liberty League. So the competition was obviously much higher as well. And then I played again this past fall, which was my last season in the Liberty League.
Are you in pain now?
No, but I'm also not playing soccer now. I was during the season to a pretty significant extent. I came into the athletic training office every day before practice and every day before games to really be properly stretched out so that I could preemptively avoid a lot of that pain, which I was still feeling. For example, my hips are complete crap, maybe partially because of my genes, but also because of the effect that the Lyme disease had on my lower back, my quads, my hamstrings. So they're still so constricted that on a day-to-day basis, I was in a lot of pain after practice. So to preempt it, I would go in the next day before practice to do a pretty significant stretching regimen beforehand.
So to continue being an athlete, you really have to be in control of your pain treatment.
Definitely. And obviously, I think my approach was different than what a lot of people would do. A lot of people might take painkillers. They might just ice every day after practice or something like that. But I tried to be more preemptive about it because of my experiences and really properly stretch every day and do a lot of the things that Matt has discovered in the past couple of years, such as foam rolling, the infamous door stretch, and trying to make my body work in a functional way, not just in a way that was good for soccer.
What's the key advice you would give someone going through pain based on your experience?
Key advice. First of all, I would say that your physical and mental health is far more important than anything else you can be doing or might be doing at the time. So if that's a sport, if that's a really intense job, if that's a lot of traveling, my opinion is to put that stuff on the back burner until you're better, because generally you're going to run yourself into the ground if you're in pain and trying to do something too rigorous, such as soccer or an intense 10-hour-a-day job or something like that. And also to look at your health holistically. There's more, I think there's more to health than whether or not you have a fever or what your weight is or, how much you can bench. I think we have a pretty skewed idea in this country of what health means and how we should go about being healthy. In my opinion, we really have an innocent until proven guilty policy on how we treat our bodies. We're like, yeah, it's fine if I don't feel bad, immediately. It's fine if I feel okay after practice or if I only have a slight headache. But I think something that I've learned from Matt here is to always err on the side of caution. If you have a headache after a game, there's a chance you have a concussion. If you're feeling tight, if you're feeling like you're in pain, stretching and mobility is always a good idea. And to not stretch is just foolish after a certain point.
I'm curious, I just have one more question, and again, you can just talk to Christina about it. So you were in pain still while you were playing soccer, and I'm just curious if there were points where you had to stop playing or what it was like to play through pain, I guess.
Well, my experience this past year is probably the best example. I was the captain of the men's soccer team, and I found myself in a situation where quitting or not being on the field wasn't an option.
Quitting wasn't an option?
Quitting, taking days off and not being on the field wasn't an option because of my role on the team. Because we were in the Liberty League, because it was a transition year for us in terms of coaches and joining the Liberty League, it wasn't an option for me to not be out there. So I really had to deal with everything preemptively. I played through the pain I was experiencing. I came in here every day to deal with it preemptively, to heat, to stim, to stretch, to do mobility work, so that I was ready each day for practice and didn't have to sit out because of the pain I had. And also, to some extent, I knew that there was, an expiration date on my season, and so long as I didn't sustain any significant head injuries or significant muscle tears or anything like that, I knew that I could stay on top of my physical health to a point that I could get through each practice and each game in a way that was still beneficial to the team, because there is a fine line. If you're running yourself into the ground every day, it doesn't do you any good, it doesn't do the team any good. So my solution was to be in here every day, and it amounted to an hour and a half before practice, 2 hours of practice. It became a much bigger time commitment, but it was definitely worth it because I don't have any injuries now, and I'm not in pain now, and I made it through the season. So.
Fantastic.